Hi, welcome to Improve Work podcast. Here you'll find resources to level up your leadership role and create the team that you want. It's Daniela here. Feel free to ask me questions about today's episode's topic. Also, if you would like me to speak about a specific topic, let me know. You'll find my email address in the description of this episode. I hope you enjoy it and subscribe. Okay, let's get started. Today we'll talk about effective employee communication, about practical solutions for increasing the quality and results of communication in your company. What are the communication patterns in your company? Do you have some specific ways in which you communicate with your team members and some specific ways in which they communicate with each other? Which are these patterns? Communication patterns play an important role in the relationships that are created between the leader and the employee and between employees, and thus they play an important role in their engagement. The employee's relationship with the leader and relationships with his colleagues are two major components of employee engagement. Because the size of the company matters in how successful are the communication patterns, I'll focus here on communication in companies with up to 30 employees. In these companies, because the number of employees is small, the management can know each employee and can interact with them in person. This is a strong advantage. First, because the manager of the company, who often is also the founder of the company, can influence directly his team members, transmitting them how he wants them to communicate with him and with their colleagues. Secondly, small companies can introduce changes much faster than large organizations. Decisions can be taken and implemented faster. And thirdly, the communication from the lower levels to the top levels is easier, unlike in large organizations where more approvals are required and where people may not even try to communicate what they want, for example, their improvements ideas. If you ever worked in a large corporation with 500 or 5,000 employees, you know what I mean. If not, imagine having to follow a process that was set by company members who are in a different country, whom you don't know and have no contact with. You can only communicate if something is wrong with this process to your direct manager, who may choose not to proceed forward with your observation or with your feedback. Your manager may also not be in contact with the people who created the process or with those who can change it. Let's see now some best practices for effective employee communication. And we'll talk about clear and concise communication, two-way communication, about active listening, about avoiding criticism and negative feedback, and practicing constructive feedback, and about transparent and honest communication. Let's take this one by one. So first, let's talk about clear and concise communication. If you observe that some employees have difficulties to express themselves clearly and concisely, guide them to improve their communication. This will save you and them time and will lead to a better understanding of their messages. So they may use too many details that are not important for the subject that is discussed. They may lose themselves in topics that are not related to the main topic. They may lose track of what is important in that communication. They may give too little details or data about the subject that is discussed. They may use language or words with which you or their colleagues are not familiar with. Or they may speak too fast or too slow for their interlocutors. So just tell them in a positive way what they should pay attention when they communicate. For example, if one employee uses too many details or open topics that are not related to the main goal of the discussion, Ask him to focus on the goal of the discussion and prepare the main points of the discussion. This preparation in advance will help him to focus more on what is important. These employees may not be aware of how their communication is perceived by others, and giving them feedback, you help them to realize this and to improve their communication. Welcome their questions and answer them. I have seen leaders who get angry and show that they are bothered when they receive questions. This is a sure way to block their communication because they will avoid saying anything that will be badly received. Important data may not be used because they don't know about this, and their work will suffer. Or they may be aware that something is missing, but they will not ask to avoid the reactions. I'm sure you are not one of those leaders. We are now at the second best practice of effective communication, two-way communication. As an extension of what I said before, encourage your employees to approach you when they have concerns or questions about their activities. Give them some ways in which they can do that. If you are in the same working space, maybe you are okay with approaching you directly, or if you have a separate office or you are not at the office, maybe by an internal chat tool, by WhatsApp or by phone. You'll still be in control of your time because you choose when to answer these requests. And sometimes, even though you discussed and plan ahead with your employees their activities, when they actually go and do the work, they may encounter situations at which they didn't think of, or other decisions have to be taken and they need your support or your approval. You may wonder how to make this work and not be approached for things that they should be taking care of. Well, establish in which situations they have to consult you and in which situation they are expected to manage things on their own. Also, if more than one employee is involved in an activity or in a project, you should assign a member that will talk with you. If you don't do this, they may all send you messages, they may all approach you for the same issue. So in this way, at one point you will discuss with John, and at another point you will discuss with Sarah. And this situation will consume more of your time, will consume their time, can lead to misunderstandings, and the information will circulate more difficult between them. Their productivity may be affected too. The third best practice for effective communication is active listening. So listening is part of the communication process. Without it, we can't understand each other. Active listening is a skill that helps us to improve our communication and avoid misunderstandings, unnecessary disagreements, or conflicts. So let's talk about some key elements of active listening. Focus on what the interlocutor is saying. Eliminate things that can be a distraction, like testing a message, watching the phone screen or a laptop screen. Also, don't think what you will answer while you are listening. Do not interrupt the other person. Let him finish what he wants to say. Try to understand the interlocutor's point of view without assuming anything. Show empathy. Ask clarifying questions when the message is not clear. Pay attention to the interlocutor non-verbal language, for example, his tone of voice, his body posture, his state of being in general. A lot of information comes from the non-verbal language. In fact, 93% of our communication is non-verbal. And also pay attention to your own non-verbal language. Have an open posture to encourage communication. For example, direct yourself towards the interlocutor, look at him, make eye contact, do not frown or show offensive attitudes, smile. When people know that they are addressing to a real listener, not a person who judges them, they are more willing to share their thoughts and make suggestions. They will appreciate their interlocutors and will cooperate with them. And this is because the need for recognition, for acceptance, is a universal human need. And these needs are met when we practice active listening. Knowing the key principles of active listening is the first step for practicing them and being a model for your employees. It will help if you come back to these key principles from time to time so you don't forget them. I sometimes forget about some of them, and then I will feel frustrated that I didn't do a good job. You could print them and put them somewhere where they are visible to you. Also, you could put them somewhere where they are visible to your team. If they see these key principles of the time, they are more likely to get in the habit of practicing them. Another best practice for effective employee communication is to avoid criticism and negative feedback and give instead constructive feedback. Our natural response to criticism and negative feedback is to protect ourselves. We become defensive and tend not to listen what the interlocutor is saying. So most probably a big part of the message is not even heard by the person who is criticized. Feelings like anger, frustrations, revolt, upset stay in the way of receiving the message. This doesn't mean not telling an employee what she or he is doing wrong, but saying it in a constructive way. What do I mean by this? Well, let's see some guidelines on how you and your employees can give constructive feedback. Make sure you understand the idea or the behavior you want to talk about before you address any criticism. You can ask clarifying questions to find out the reasons for which this person sustains that idea or has that specific behavior. Talk about the idea or the behavior that is criticized, not about the person. Separate the person from his ideas or his behaviors. This means to eliminate everything that refers to the person's character, personality, or traits. Explain why you consider that this person's idea or behavior is not okay. Back up your arguments with proven facts. If a behavior is criticized, explain what the effects of his behavior on you, upon other colleagues, or upon customers are. Specify what aspects of his behavior are okay. Probably you can find some positive aspects, even though these are not enough reasons for you to sustain his idea or behavior. Use a neutral tone of voice, show an open and understanding attitude towards this person. In the case a behavior is criticized, make sure you explain to this person what the behavior that you expected from him was. Tell him how you want him to behave in the future and why. Check if this person understands your point of view and if he agrees with you. Ask if he has objections related to your arguments or requirements. In this way, you can discuss them and reach an agreement with this person. If the person doesn't accept your point of view, he may do what you request him, but his engagement will be low, and thus the results will be low as well. And don't forget the main point of constructive criticism. So for criticisms to be constructive, it has to help the person who is criticized to develop. Through your feedback, he or she has the chance to learn something, to become aware of something, or to see things from different perspectives. Another best practice for effective employee communication is practicing transparent and open communication. An important component of efficient communication is creating trustful relationships between you and your employees and between them. You can do this by being transparent and honest in your communication and by encouraging them to do the same. A lack of trust can make them retain information from you, hide their mistakes, or things that they think will not be well received by you. This is another reason to avoid criticism and focus on solutions. How to be open and transparent. Share information that are relevant for them, like company's plans and goals, the company performance. Keep your word. Promises that are not respected will make them lose their trust and can reduce their engagement. Recognize their contribution and achievements. This help them to stay engaged. Ask for their feedback. This shows that you value their opinions and perspectives and creates a collaborative working environment. Also, this will encourage them to ask for feedback themselves, which will improve communication between them. An important aspect of effective communication is where you communicate with your employees. How your workplace is organized. Do you work in the same space with other people from your company? Do you have a separate office? Do you have meeting rooms? It's important to have discussions with your employees in spaces that are appropriate for the goals of the discussions. If you have to discuss with a team member about his activities, communication will be more effective if you have the conversation in a separate space so other people are not witnessing this discussion. Most probably they don't need to know about what you are discussing. Their attention will be distracted by your conversation and they will not be able to concentrate fully on their work. It is not such a thing like distributive attention. Every time you pay attention to more than one thing, your attention will decrease, so you will not be 100% attentive to your activities. These people who observe your discussion may disturb you with their problems or activities. They may start their own conversation, talk on the phone, or they may make noises. They may make wrong interpretations of the pieces of information that they pick from your conversation without knowing the whole context. And also, you and your interlocutor will not be only preoccupied by the discussion, but how this discussion is perceived by those who witness it. These are some reasons for which it's important to choose wisely the space where you will talk with your employees. I recommend at least 2 spaces where private conversations can take place, one that is available for you and one that is available for your team members. They also have situations in which they have to discuss specific tasks or projects or make phone calls, and the meeting room will add tremendous value to their work. Advise your team members to use this meeting room for discussions that they need to have on their projects or on other work-related activities. Let's talk now about communication barriers. Some of these were already mentioned before. Being aware of the barriers that intervene in our communication help us to avoid them and have a better communication. So, what are some of these barriers? External factors that distract our attention. As mentioned before, discussing in a place where other people are present or where background noises make the communication more difficult. Internal factors that distract our attention. Internal factors like our emotional state can prevent us from receiving the message and understanding it. So feelings like anger, frustration, revolt that can appear when a person is criticized or when things don't go as expected may block his capacity to focus on what is happening externally. Also, when a person is strongly preoccupied by a situation or a problem, can have difficulties to give all his attention to the person who is speaking with. That's why it's best to delay our discussions if we can when this is the situation. When we are angry or upset, most probably we will not give our best responses, and this can lead to other issues like conflicts or misunderstandings. Don't send that email when you are angry. Don't go and speak with that person who upset you right away. Wait till you calm down and then think what you'll do. Another possible barrier is the language that we use. For example, do you always understand what your accountant says? Does she explain the specialized terms that she is using? Or do you always understand what the person who fixes your computer system says about the issue of the system? Also, different interpretation of the words that are used in a conversation will create misunderstandings. So check if you are on the same page with the person you are talking to. Ask for details if you are not sure what the other person means through different words. Different status levels can create barriers in communication too, especially when the distance between these levels is large and when the company's culture doesn't support a free flow of communication between these levels. Most of the companies with small number of employees will not have this issue because they don't have many hierarchical levels. But a leader who is hard to be approached will create this barrier. As mentioned earlier, make sure that your employees know that they can talk with you when they need something and give them the ways in which they can do that. Stereotypes and labels can also create barriers in our communication. We may form an opinion of a person based on the gender, religion, age, nationality. Then we filter our communication based on these preconceptions we have about them. Also, the labels that we put on different people will affect our communication. If we think that a person is stupid, we will not bother to explain things to this person. Or if we think that a person is a troublemaker, we will avoid that person. One major problem is that when we put labels, we set some expectations to which they may respond. If I don't explain to the person who I think that is not so smart why he should do something, that person will not understand my reasons, situation that creates the right context for him to make mistakes and enhance my belief that he is not so smart. We all know examples and experiments from educational system where children that were labeled as good students had good grades, and those who were labeled as poor students had low grades. So think if you developed some beliefs about your team members without realizing beliefs that falls in this category. Eliminate them and you'll communicate differently and you'll set different expectations for this person. Also, see if some of your team members have stereotypes or labels towards certain members and help them to become aware of this and change them. Okay, so let's do a short recap. We talked about why effective communication is important and how it impacts the company. We talked about the best practices for effective communication, and we talked about some communication barriers. I hope this is helpful for you, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Use the email address from the description. If you liked this episode, subscribe. If you need support to improve your employee motivation, check the online program How to Motivate Your Employees So They Care for Your Business and Help You Grow It. You'll find the link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.